Come on, let's talk about real estate closings, new contracts, and pricing in New York City right now. So, in case you didn't know, the market bottomed out in New York City sometime towards the end of 2019. So, whether the second quarter or third quarter was probably end of the third quarter to the fourth quarter is probably where the turnaround started. And by January and February of 2020, we were seeing a real uptick in new contracts. So something close to 17 or 18% at Corcoran itself, and I'm sure similar things for most of the other real estate companies in the city. So that said, we're still seeing closings. Closings, remember, take anywhere between 30 to 90 or even 120 days to happen in New York City. And those closings are starting to slow down, but there's still a pretty decent amount of business going on. And I was on two calls today. One was with the CEOs of several residential real estate firms, Brown Harris Stevens, Compass was CEO, and Triple Mint and Warburg. And they were discussing new contracts and closings and this kind of stuff. And I was also on a conference call, a video call with Pierre DeBoss from Romer DeBoss, which is a great residential real estate law firm here in the city, and they handle a lot of transactions, so they have a good perspective on this stuff. So first, with closings, I'm going to show you actually an article on The Real Deal recently that was, these are all the resi deals in New York City last week. There were a surprising number of deals. At least to me, I didn't realize that they were having quite so many. Across the 5 boroughs, the total number of transactions that closed last week was down sharply, but the dollar figure was up slightly. This shows the vast percentage of closed deals were in Manhattan, 54%, as opposed to Brooklyn at 25%. There were 298 transactions, which totaled $441.2 million. So that is more than I expected, considering our industry is essentially shut down. But again, remember, a lot of these contracts started oftentimes a couple of months ago at least. So the number of transactions was a 25% drop from the 398 recorded the week before, and the dollar amount was 5% uptick. So I expect that you're going to see that number of transactions continue to drop for the coming weeks because of the delay between getting into contract and closing in New York State. So a lot of these were probably pre-COVID, almost definitely pre-COVID-19 contracts that entered into. That said, the 4% uptick in price was mainly from the priciest sale of the week at Vornado Realty Trust's 220 Central Park South. This is a new development, okay? It sold for $53.6 million. Or $9,028 a square foot, which is crazy numbers. Like I actually don't understand that. I would like to understand a little bit more why somebody would pay $9,000 a square foot. That is the highest that I've heard of. I've got to check on my facts on that. So, but forgetting about that for a moment, I want to look at the first couple here, right? 220 Central Park South at $53 million, 50 Bridge Park Drive was $20 million. These are new development sales, okay? And I'm sure if you go through the other 298 entries there's a number of other new development sales in that list. And this is something I talked about in a couple of different parts in previous videos about new development and the state of the market here in New York City, and why new development is different than resale right now during the coronavirus, primarily because when you buy new development, you're oftentimes buying things sight unseen. Maybe you see a model apartment or you see model finishes, but you're not actually oftentimes not seeing the actual apartment that you're buying. So that is actually a strange competitive advantage to new development sellers in a market that is only allowed to be shown virtually, or you would have to go into contract on something that is sight unseen. And what this mirrors is the part of the talk today from these CEOs I was telling you about from Triple Mint and BHS, where they're talking about what they're seeing in terms of new places going under contract. And two of them, one of them was discussing a $28 million sale or something in that price range. And it was in new development, and it was for multiple properties in the new development. And what they said was this was a buyer who was an investor, or obviously well-capitalized investor, who was seeing opportunities in the market and going in to buy those places at a discount. And ostensibly will then be turning around and either selling them or renting them or whatever the case may be. But these were not necessarily primary residences. Now, they've also seen up to $7 million purchases, and that I believe may have been a primary residence as well, which is very unusual. Everybody agrees that 99% of people are not going to buy something, probably 99.9% of people are not going to buy something sight unseen for them to live in. But as from an investor's standpoint, it makes a little bit more sense, particularly if you're buying in bulk, which when you buy in bulk in Manhattan, that requires tens of millions of dollars, as opposed to, when you might do that in other markets where you can buy in bulk in lower prices. So that's something that's important to note when you're talking about new contracts that are happening, and they are happening. So that, and coupled with the sales, it still gives the appearance of a certain amount of business happening, transactions that are happening, and new transactions that are being created in the market right now. And it is, again, there is an opportunity here because rates are at their historic lowest point and prices are at their lowest point, particularly in Manhattan, in years. So those things put together suggest that, yeah, maybe if you are thinking about doing something similar, being ready to do that soon or in sometime this year is probably a very good idea. And I've heard multiple people say this. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was actually the conversation that we had with Pierre DeBoss for our sales meeting at Corcoran. And he was saying now his firm transacts usually about 200 sales a week. And that number has obviously dropped down in the recent weeks. But he's only seeing approximately one deal or so a week die completely. And with the other deals, they're seeing negotiations. He has seen sellers give concessions, say essentially be I would say compassionate to buyers who have gotten into worse situations, and have given them concessions in terms of getting out of contracts of sale and giving them back a portion, and sometimes a very large portion of their deposits. And I also asked him about, how often in regular times, do you see this happen? And how much do people usually get back out of their deposit? If they're buyers, how much do they get back of their deposit if they try to get out of a contract based on having buyer remorse? He said that doesn't usually happen in normal times, which is my experience as well. But if he had to give a number when it does happen, he said around 25% of the deposit may come back to the buyer. And a lot of that is dependent upon the seller and their tolerance for the kind of litigation that would have to go on in order for them to get back that money. And right now, litigation is very difficult because the courts are closed down, because evictions aren't allowed, because time is of the essence. Letters are a joke right now. I've heard this from both Pierre and from other lawyers that I've been listening to. So the last thing, though, that I want to leave you with, which is I found very interesting, is that he said that he has not seen one deal where the price has been dropped more than 5%. So whatever concessions that have been going on, whatever renegotiations that have been going on, sellers have not been saying okay to price drops over 5%. And that suggests basically they're saying that, they don't want to sell at an unreasonably low price in their opinion. They'd rather hold on to their places and rent them, or just hold on and wait to sell. And it also shows a certain amount of optimism in the market in the near future. And that optimism is also echoed by what I started talking about with you, is the fact that we saw a real uptick in buyer activity in the first couple of months of this year. And everyone feels that there is a lot of pent up buyer demand, which could propel the market forward. And so I just want to leave you with that thought, that possibility. And I'm not trying to be optimistic about it, but I know that there's pent up demand. I know that sellers have already adjusted their prices over the past couple of years and their expectations with that. So it really feels like we are at a bottom of the market, and that bottom of the market might be pushed 5% lower right now, but there seems like there's a real resistance to it going much lower than that. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about buying and selling in the coming year and going forward. I think that's something that I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to, and I will update you as time goes on. But right now, that's the market update on pricing, on closings, and on new contracts. So stay home, stay safe, stay not too bored, go watch a Karate Kid movie, and I'll talk to you later.